In this video, I want to talk about anger because anger is a very misunderstood emotion. When you hear people say things like anger is toxic, anger is dangerous, anger is something you should avoid at all costs, well, I'm here to tell you that they're completely wrong. Completely wrong. I'm going to say something that you most likely will never hear in the self-help or motivational spaces. And that is that anger is not the enemy. Anger is information. And very often, anger is the first sign that something in your life needs to change. Now, the real problem isn't anger. The real problem here is rage. And those two things are not the same. When people hear the word anger, they immediately imagine someone losing control. And they imagine road rage, someone cutting them off in traffic, you exploding, you starting to scream. Maybe you do something stupid. Yeah, that's rage. And rage is very dangerous because when rage goes up, your ability to think clearly goes down. Your logic disappears and your ability to process information drops. Your brain basically switches into reaction mode. But anger itself is different. Anger is not loss of control. Anger is a signal. Anger is your mind telling you that something isn't right. Maybe someone crossed your boundary. Maybe someone treated you unfairly. Or maybe something in your life is wrong and needs to change. And anger is often the first alarm system that tells you that something needs your attention. Now, here's where things get interesting. Rage doesn't come from anger alone. Rage is what happens when anger meets helplessness. When someone feels angry but believes they have no control over their situation, no way to fix it, no way to change it, no way to improve it, that pressure builds and eventually it explodes. Rage is anger that has nowhere to go, but anger itself can actually be incredibly useful when it's directed properly. Anger has historically been one of the biggest drivers of change. Look at the major injustices throughout history. People who fought to end slavery. Do you think they were angry at slavery? Of course. Of course they were. Of course they were angry at slavery. They were angry that human beings were being treated as property. And that anger pushed them to change the system and demand change. Change rarely happens when everyone is comfortable. Change usually begins when someone says, "This is unacceptable." That's anger. Anger can also push you to change your own life. Let's say you're stuck in a situation you hate. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's a lifestyle that's going nowhere. If you feel nothing, if you feel numb, if you feel indifferent, that's actually the worst place to be because numb people don't change anything and they don't do anything. But someone who's angry about the situation, that person might actually take action. Anger can become motivation. It can push you to improve your circumstances. It can also push you to stop tolerating things that are holding you back. Even in relationships, anger can actually be useful if it's expressed correctly. Now, obviously, rage in a relationship is very destructive, but anger communicated properly can actually improve the relationship. If something bothers you and you keep it inside, if you stay silent, if you pretend everything is fine, eventually that pressure builds up and it explodes. If you fail to channel your anger properly and express that anger through words, eventually that anger, that unexpressed anger, will become rage. It would manifest itself in the relationship as either passive-aggressive behavior or self-sabotage. But if something bothers you and you communicate it clearly, now that anger becomes information. Now it becomes feedback. Now it becomes something that the relationship can actually grow from. Again, the problem isn't the emotion of anger. The problem is how it's expressed and how it's channeled. Now, here's something interesting. Some people will tell you that anger is always bad. But think about that for a moment. If you never feel angry, you will never challenge anything. You will never resist anything. You will never change anything. Anger is often the first step towards transformation. It's the emotion that makes people say, enough. That's enough. So the real question isn't, is anger good or bad? The real question is, what do you do with it? Do you let it consume you? Or do you turn it into rage? Or do you channel it into something productive? Do you use it to improve your life? Or do you use it to correct what's wrong? Do you use it to move forward in a better direction? Because anger itself isn't the enemy. Anger is a signal. Anger is often the first sign that something in your life needs attention. And the real danger is when anger mixes with helplessness and it turns into rage. But when anger is directed properly, it can become one of the most powerful forces for change in your life.